I told my dad to leave with his new family, and now everyone's calling me the villain. So, just a heads up, I'm not from the US, and I'm really not trying to get into legal stuff here. I know exactly where I stand when it comes to that. Let me give you a bit of background first. But before I dive into all that, let me say this, I've noticed the channel's been slowing down a bit lately. If you're here and you like these stories, hitting that subscribe button is the easiest way to show support. It's fast, it's free, and it really helps keep this community growing strong. My dad remarried when I was about 15. His new wife was constantly on my case, super pushy, mostly because she barely had any kind of relationship with her own daughter, and I guess she was trying to fill that gap with me. The worst part? My dad just stood by and let it all happen. I couldn't take it anymore, so I ended up moving out to live with my grandpa, that's my dad's father. A few months later, when I was 17, Grandpa passed away suddenly. He left everything to me. I inherited all of his properties, including the house. Instead of me moving back in with my dad and his wife, they decided to move into my house, Grandpa's place. When I turned 18, I left for college. I come back home a few times a year, but I let them stay there rent-free, under one condition. They don't mess with my room or Grandpa's old office. The house has 4 bedrooms now, so there's space. Out of nowhere, I get this call from my dad. He tells me I need to come clean out my room because they're planning to turn it into a nursery. Apparently, his wife got back in touch with her daughter, the one she never really had a bond with because the daughter's pregnant and doesn't have anywhere to live. I told him no. I reminded him that they're living in my house, and if they even think about touching those rooms, I won't hesitate to kick them out. I pointed out that there's an empty bedroom she can use, but he argued that it's too small for both mom and baby. At that point, I said if that's a problem for them, they can always go back to his old place. She can have my room there if they want. Honestly, I'm not even sure if he still owns that house. I really feel like I've been more than fair about all this. But then my uncle, my dad's brother, who, by the way, doesn't even have a great relationship with my dad, gave me a call. He said I should take a moment to think it over before making them leave. That got me wondering. Maybe now's actually the perfect time to remind them that living there isn't some permanent arrangement. They're only there because I allow it. I also started thinking I should probably make a surprise trip home just to check that they're not trying to pull a fast one and change things around behind my back. Honestly, I'm starting to think my dad doesn't even have that house anymore. Why else would my uncle, who barely gets along with him, tell me to reconsider kicking them out? Maybe my uncle's just worried he'll be the one stuck dealing with my dad if I go through with this. My response? I've decided I'm heading over there first thing tomorrow morning. I want to check on the house and have a face-to-face talk with them. And yeah, I'm pretty sure my uncle called because my dad already sold his house. But I also doubt my uncle's gonna let them move in with him. He knows if my dad and I have a blow-up, he's the next person my dad will run to, and he's not trying to deal with that headache. Update. 3 days later. The same day I wrote my original post, I called up my lawyer to come with me so we could handle this the right way and keep things civil. We went over there early Saturday morning, armed with all the paperwork. But as soon as I tried to open the door, I got hit with a lovely surprise. My dad had changed the locks on me. Huge mistake on his part. We ended up talking through the door, and he flat out told me he wasn't going to let me in until I changed my mind about the nursery. I explained that I wasn't even there to throw them out right away. I wanted to settle this properly. But if he wouldn't let me in, I'd handle it my way. He still wouldn't open up. So, off I went to the police station. On my way there, my uncle called. Turns out, my dad had already tried to get him involved, tried to get him to convince me to back down. But my uncle wasn't having it. He told me he'd support whatever I decided. At the station, my lawyer laid out the situation. The police came with us to make sure I could evict them without any drama. Once we got back to the house, the cop spoke to my dad and told him straight up that he had to let me in and start packing up his stuff. I even hired a moving truck to help them out. My dad put up a fight, saying he didn't have anywhere to go since he sold his house. He also tried to claim that he was the rightful owner now. But the guy didn't have a single piece of paperwork to prove it, nothing. In one last desperate move, my dad tried to guilt-trip me by bringing up the fact that my stepsister's pregnant. But honestly, she's barely a few weeks along, and that doesn't change a thing. It wasn't going to work in their favor. Once all the drama settled down, getting their stuff out of the house didn't take long. Most of what's inside the house belongs to me anyway. The only exceptions were whatever they had in their bedroom and a few things my stepsister had brought over. I'm staying at the house now, and I plan on being here for at least the next few days. First thing I did was change the locks. I'm also getting security cameras installed, just in case. I had a talk with my girlfriend about possibly moving in together here, and she's completely on board. She actually seemed excited about it. I'll be speaking with my boss soon to see if working remotely is an option, but even if it's not the end of the world. At least I won't be stressing about who's trying to take over the house behind my back. Everything else from here is pretty straightforward. That's pretty much the whole story. Thanks for sticking with me through this mess of a family situation. Top comment. Commenter. How did they take it? I'm guessing it wasn't pretty. Lots of yelling and cursing? OP's response. I kept my distance and watched from afar, but yeah, my dad definitely didn't take it well. He looked genuinely nervous, probably because both the cops and my lawyer were standing right there. My lawyer did all the talking. Later on, she filled me in on the full conversation, which I already included in the original post. With her present, the police standing by, and him knowing he was already hanging by a thread legally, he didn't push his luck. Once it was clear he didn't have a leg to stand on, he gave in. Second update, 6 weeks later. So this part comes courtesy of my girlfriend. She found this space again and encouraged me to share what's happened recently with my dad. We hadn't heard a single word from him since the eviction, not until a few days ago, that is. I wasn't home at the time, but my girlfriend was. She told me he just showed up at the house, totally unannounced. He came by to say that now that we're living in the house, we were expected to host them for Christmas. Seriously, he even handed her a list of the food they wanted served and the gifts they were expecting. Like it was completely normal. She shut that down fast, told him to leave before she called the police. I honestly thought that was going to be the end of it. Again. But nope. Yesterday, he showed up again. This time, he contacted my mom, who he hasn't spoken to in 6 years since their divorce, and invited her to spend the holidays with us. She wasn't having it and told him that she already had plans to take me and my girlfriend to Europe for New Year's. And believe it or not, he had the nerve to demand that she include them too. She just hung up on him. And then, if you can believe it, he came back to the house demanding I talk to my mom and convince her to bring them along, or that we should foot the bill so they could join us. At this point, the whole situation stopped being sad and just turned ridiculous. My girlfriend and I laughed so hard, we didn't even realize when he finally left. Now, I'll be the first to admit my relationship with my dad hasn't exactly been warm, but he's never acted this entitled before. It's no wonder my grandfather, his own dad, was so disappointed in him. But somehow, my dad keeps finding new ways to outdo himself. I don't know if he's going to stop anytime soon, but for the sake of what's left of this year, I really hope he does. Relevant comment. Commenter. I hope you've got a solid security system. You might even want to think about a restraining order before he tries breaking in over the holidays. You should send him a postcard from Europe. OP's response. Yeah, the security setup here is solid. As for a restraining order, those don't really do much where I live. But trust me, he knows I won't hesitate to get my lawyer and the police involved again if he tries anything. Downvoted commenter. Has it ever crossed your mind that maybe your dad is dealing with something mentally or socially? Maybe he's struggling and that's why he's acting this way. And if he is broken, don't you think you have a responsibility to help him? OP's response. I agree he's broken, but it's by his own doing, not because of outside pressure or stress. He knows exactly what he's doing. I was mostly raised by my grandparents, his parents, and they didn't treat me any differently than they treated him or my uncle. And my uncle turned out fine. My dad just chose this path, and now he's living the consequences. It still blows my mind how they ended up the way they did. My grandparents raised all of us with the same values. They taught us to be decent, respectful people. But my dad and my uncle, they just flat out chose not to be. Things got so bad that my grandparents passed away without even speaking to either of them. I spent my childhood watching my dad mess up over and over again, never once taking responsibility, never once trying to do better. My grandparents really tried to help him get his act together, but he wouldn't have it. He always insisted he was living life on his own terms, like that somehow excused everything. And honestly, how do you help someone who thinks he's never wrong? My grandfather used to say my dad was weak, and I've got nothing to argue with there. I completely agree. I never expected anything from my grandparents, not a cent. I'm beyond grateful for what they chose to leave me, and even if they'd left me nothing, I'd still feel lucky because they had already done more for me than they ever needed to. As for my dad, I never thought I'd get anything from him, not financially, not emotionally. Same goes for my mom. Our relationship has always been pretty surface level, even when I was a kid. And if she ever decided to cut ties or leave me out of anything, I wouldn't be bothered. That's her choice, just like it was with my dad. At the end of the day, I just take what's given to me. And yeah, I'll admit it. You're right. In my own way, I'm entitled to. Third update, 2 months and 2 weeks later. A few people reached out asking for an update, so here it is. After the last run-in with my dad, things actually stayed quiet for a while. My girlfriend and I went off to Europe as planned. Christmas came and went, and there wasn't a peep from my dad. My friends were keeping an eye on the house while we were gone, and they reported everything was fine, no issues at all. But then, on December 28th, I got a call from my uncle, my dad's brother. He told me he was getting ready to leave the state and was planning to sell his house. He asked if I'd be interested in buying it because, according to him, he was in a hurry to get out. He didn't give me a reason, and I didn't ask. All I cared about was that he was desperate, and that gave me an opportunity to finally fulfill something my grandpa had asked of me. Let me back up for a second and give some context. That house my uncle was selling? It was actually my grandfather's childhood home. Grandpa had given it to my uncle years ago but regretted it later. Before he passed, Grandpa asked me to try to get it back someday. If I succeeded, he wanted it to go to my cousin Jenna, my uncle's daughter from his first marriage, the one he never acknowledged. That was one of the big reasons Grandpa regretted handing over the house in the first place. What my uncle doesn't know is that I've kept in touch with Jenna, and I know the whole backstory. If he had any idea I was connected to her, he never would have sold that house to me. That's just the kind of petty guy he is. So, seeing an opening, I decided to use the whole family connection card while he was desperate. I knew the ballpark value of the house, but I offered him way below market price and said I could pay in 3 installments. Of course, he turned it down, said the offer was too low, and claimed he wasn't planning on coming back. Translation? He wasn't going to call me again. I told him if he could just wait until I got home on January 3rd, I'd give him the full payment in one go, plus cover the legal costs and help with his moving expenses. All he had to do in the meantime was pack up and have the paperwork ready. To my surprise, he jumped at that deal. When I got back, I bought the house without any trouble. My uncle took off the same day. The very next day, I called Jenna and told her to come over as soon as she could. She lives in Europe, but I let her know there was something else our grandparents left her, and it was finally time. She flew in a few days ago, and I handed her the house along with the remaining money. She needed to stay a little while to sort out the paperwork. And wouldn't you know it, during that time, my dad showed up. Turns out, my uncle had lined up another buyer behind my back. That buyer? My dad. My dad had begged my uncle to hold off for a few more days so he could pull together the money. But by the time he called back to seal the deal, my uncle had already sold the place to me, probably because he knew my dad couldn't come near my house without causing trouble. So what did my dad do? He went straight to what he thought was his backup plan, the house I'd just given to Jenna. But he was in for a surprise. He actually had the nerve to show up, knock on the door, and demand that I hand over the house to him. No one was home at the time, so what did he do? He broke in. Yep, he seriously broke into the house. Luckily, everything was caught on the doorbell camera. We watched it all unfold. My cousin doesn't speak the local language, so I had to call the police on her behalf. Thanks to the location, and the fact that she's a foreign national, the response time was way quicker than usual. I just wish I had a picture of the look on my dad's face when he realized the house didn't even belong to me. It was absolutely priceless. With help from my lawyer and some solid documentation, my cousin filed charges against him, and when combined with everything else he'd already done, it finally caught up with him. My dad's going to be spending a few months behind bars, all thanks to a team of people who were done with his crap. That's also when I finally found out what made my uncle so desperate to sell the house and get out of town. Turns out, he's seriously pissed off his wife's family. So, I sent him a little message, a warning really. I told him that if he liked tipping off my dad about our business, then I could just as easily return the favor and let his in-laws know exactly where he ran off to. Basically said, if he wants to keep playing dumb games, he's going to win dumb prizes. Next thing I know, blocked. He had already said he wasn't coming back, but I figured I'd make sure of it. If my cousin decides to keep the house, which she probably will, it actually works out in her favor. She doesn't want to risk running into my uncle anyway. So yeah, the year really kicked off with a bang. At this point, I've basically cut ties with what used to be my family, and honestly, I hope it stays that way. Now I can finally start focusing on building a real future, one with my girlfriend, without worrying about toxic people showing up and trying to drag us down.